So for those of you I've not yet met, I'm Kristen Woods. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Alumni Engagement at the University at Buffalo, and I'm delighted to see all of you here today. As we continue through the program this afternoon, I encourage you to keep eating and enjoy the delicious meal that's been prepared for you. I'm so pleased to see so many of you here today. Volunteers are critical to a 21st century university. We count on you to help mentor students, create opportunities for scholarship and career connections, and offer input on programming. We appreciate all that you do for us. The Volunteer Leadership Summit is an opportunity created for you. So enjoy, soak in the information, and ask questions. We want you to have a great experience while you're with us here today. I am also delighted to welcome and thank our three co-hosts for today's summit. Jeremy Jacobs, Chairman of Delaware North, owner of the National Hockey League Boston Bruins, and Chairman of the UB Council. Fran Littrow, partner at Francis Littrow Attorneys at Law and Chairman of the UB Foundation Board, and Mary Garlick Roll, President of the UB Alumni Association Board of Directors. We are pleased to once again have all three participating in this year's summit activities, and they'll be up here on the stage throughout the program. I would also like to welcome UB senior leaders who are here today, in particular UB President Satish K. Tripathi and Nancy Wells, Vice President for Philanthropy and Alumni Engagement. There are many more vice presidents and deans in attendance today, and I thank them for being here as well. They too understand how important volunteer support is to UB, and they wanted to be here to participate in the summit with you. Please join me in giving these folks a round of applause. The planning for this year's summit also benefited from the counsel of a volunteer steering committee. We thank them for their help in planning this special day for all of us. Will those who are here please stand when I read your name? Mark Adler, Mike Anderson, George Cleary, Rich Ferranti, Amy Hierstack, Gary Jastrab, Carl Lamb, Randy Loftus, Richard Lynch, Kathleen Murphy, Marianne Rokita, Mark Stramalia, and James Van Wyck. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. To kick off the program, please help me in welcoming UB's 15th president, Satish K. Tripathi.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the University at Buffalo, I want to thank you for joining for today's Volunteer Leadership Summit. I know many of you took the bus tour today, this morning actually, and went to downtown. And talking to you, it seems like this was really worth it. Also, it shows the impact of UB on the region and on the city. So thank you for doing that, because that's really very important for us to get your feedback how we're doing here. As a university community, we're deeply grateful for all of you on the behalf of UB, what you do on behalf of UB, and for the profound impact your selfless commitment and support have on our student, faculty, staff, and the university. Thanks to your dedication to and advocacy for UBBR reaching even greater heights as premier research university. We can only achieve our vision with the support of our alumni and university friends. You are wonderful ambassadors of our university. And with the time and effort you generously give to us, and I know many of you actually were at UB a week ago attending a Dean's Advisory Committee, and you're here today and you're not local. Thank you for your time and effort that you devote to UB. We are expanding our impact as a university and attracting the best and the brightest students to UB. We offer our sincere thanks to you and your support to our students through scholarship and internship. the meaningful professional opportunities and experiences you provide for our students is more important than even before. Again, thank you for your generous philanthropic support of UB and all that it makes possible. And thank you for staying connected to UB and for your engagement with UB. We always look forward to seeing you on the campus, whether you are cheering for our athletes, taking part in special events on campus and in the community. Each of you bring life to our mission. We are deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, President Tripathi. One of our biggest cheerleaders is none other than the UB Alumni Association Board of Directors President. Please help me give applause to Mary Garlick Roll in recognition of her own service as Alumni Association Board of Directors President. As her term in office winds down, tomorrow she leads her last meeting as President of the Board. Thank you, Mary. We are grateful for your leadership, your friendship, and your passion for your alma mater. Mary will now announce our 2017 Alumni Volunteer Service Award recipients.
Thank you. I get to be taller because I stand on a box. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see me talk at all. So it's always my pleasure to be here. It's always my pleasure to welcome people, all of you. I'm really thrilled to see so many alumni and so many volunteers and so many friends of the university. So for me, this is actually so much fun to be able to introduce award winners. So, officially, as president of the Alumni Association, I really am pleased to award the volunteer awards, the Volunteer Service Awards today. So the first person is Patrick Abami. Where's Patrick? Yay. All right. So Patrick, I'm going to say some really nice things about you, okay? All right. Pat, I promised him I'd be nice, so I'm doing my best here. Pat attributes much of his success to his UB education. Most of us do that as well, as he earned his bachelor's and master's degree from the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. As an acclaimed industrial and systems engineer, he spent more than 4 decades at Applied Management Systems, a healthcare operation consulting practice, helping manage projects for more than 400 hospitals in 35 states. That's just amazing to me. Pat dedicates his time not only to the state of New Hampshire, where he currently resides, but to his alma mater, that's us, as well. He's serving his 4th term as a member of the New Hampshire House of Representatives and has been vice chair of the House and Ways Committee for 3 years. At UB, Pat, in his spare time, taught operations research part-time in the Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering, known as ISE. He chaired the department's advisory board for 6 years and served on the School of Engineering and Applied Science Advisory Council for, I think it was 4 years, right, Pat? The school's Alumni Association honored him in 2016 as Engineer of the Year. So Dean Liesel Folks, is Liesel here? I can't see her in the audience. Yeah, no, okay. She says, this is what she has to say, the dean. Pat is an enthusiastic volunteer and dedicated donor. As chair of ISE's advisory board, he has worked to increase board member engagement, provided input to the department faculty on the curriculum, and has advised our students on ISE careers. Please join me in congratulating Patrick Abami. Congratulations. So it's also my pleasure to award another award. I love doing this. Our second Alumni Volunteer Service awardee is Michael Murray. Michael has volunteered in many capacities on behalf of UB's School of Management and the University at Buffalo. He is a member of the School of Management's Dean Advisory Council. It seems like there's half the audience here is on Dean's Advisory Councils. A member of the school's Accounting Advisory Council, and a past board member of the UB Alumni Association. Michael has focused much of his time and efforts supporting students and serving as a judge for the School of Management's student case competition, working to enhance internship opportunities, which is very valuable to us and to the students, and advocating for financial support for the school. He and his wife, Catherine, who is a CPA, made a generous gift to establish the Michael and Catherine Murray Mezzanine on the 3rd floor of the Alfiero Center. Michael, this is a quote, "Michael's dedication to UB and the School of Management are exemplary," said Dean Paul Teskla. He always is the first to step up when needed, and we're so grateful for the support that he and Catherine have shown over the years. Michael has spent nearly his entire career at Ernst & Young. He was hired in 1976 and became a partner in the Buffalo office in 1999. During his decades there, he retired in 2012. We'll have to talk about the retirement issue. Where is Michael? Yeah, we'll talk about that offline. Murray saw a globalization, world connectivity, and general evolution of the accounting profession and brought about significant changes in this field. So please join me in congratulating Michael J. Murray for this well-deserved award. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce two very special individuals. In January, we were thrilled to welcome Scott Weber as UV's Vice President for Student Life. Scott, a professor of civil, structural, and environmental engineering, previously served as Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs. Today we're in for a special treat as Scott poses some questions to one of UB's most influential volunteers, UB Council Chairman Jeremy Jacobs. As I noted earlier, Mr. Jacobs is chairman of Delaware North, a global leader in hospitality and food service. He also owns the Boston Bruins of the National Hockey League and serves as chairman of the league's Board of Governors. Here in Buffalo, the Jacobs family needs no introduction, as they are widely known and recognized for their generosity and involvement in causes too numerous to name. The university is honored to be one of those beneficiaries, gaining so much over the years from the time, advice, and support from the Jacobs family. Mr. Jacobs has served on the UB Council since 1997 and as its chairman since 1998. He is a previous chair, trustee, and director of the UB Foundation, and former chair of the President's Board of Visitors and advisor to the School of Management. I invite those gentlemen to please come to the stage.
Let's not fall off, right?
It already fell off.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I know the audience is really excited to hear about some of the responses you have to some of our questions. I don't know, did you know they were going to say so many nice things about you before?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So, as you may know, and I think you do, there's been a lot of buzz lately about some budget actions that resulted in a free tuition plan for SUNY students and CUNY, known as the Excelsior Scholarship. And I was curious, what you might be thinking about that and thoughts you might want to share with us about that.
Well, in a holistic way, I think our mandate is to educate the people of the state of New York. So in that sense, it seems to meet that requirement. But it'd be interesting to see how it unfolds and how it gets enacted and how it gets, how we deal with it. When something's for free, it takes on the connotation that that's the value of it. And really, a UB education is something very valued and something people seek. So in that extent, that'll be interesting to watch it unfold, how it affects the academic environment of this community is equally something we should be as much interested in, because while we're giving education away for free at a state institution, where is it in the competitive balance? Where do we fit? Where we fit insofar as trying to educate that population that doesn't have the opportunity to go to this university.
So, from our own experiences in watching students and their parents come, there's definitely some excitement, but there's also, I think, some real questions that still remain. And I think that's one of the things you're really thinking about there.
Yeah, well, when we think about it, is that going to raise the academic level here?
Right.
I think there's a good chance it might.
Right.
Does it make a higher level of barrier to coming to this great university? That will be involved. How does it affect the Canisiuses and the whole Catholic education system here, which has been great for this community? And not everybody should be going necessarily to the University of Buffalo. So, it's one size doesn't fit all. So the college life is very important here. And there's a lot that, I use this term, I've got 18 grandchildren. Some go to universities, some go to colleges, some go to in various levels. And that's because that's where they belong. There wasn't an economic barrier in this case. But the fact is that we need these other academic institutions in this community. We definitely need it to support the people of Western New York.
So let me follow up a little bit on that. So we have a large number of educational institutions here in Western New York.
Right.
Some large, some small, some private, obviously public. As a leader in the community, how do you view that number of educational institutions here, and where do you see UB's role in that sort of landscape?
University of Buffalo is at the ultimate point. We have a broad base of master's programs and doctoral and other programs which others don't have. UB's the biggest engine, if you might say, in Western New York insofar as influencing where we're going, both from a business level, from an arts level, others. We drive that very much here. And we interact with the city at large. The whole medical corridor is really affected by this university, and more than affected, I think it's driven by it. So a lot of the research, a lot of the development studies, as we develop products and things like that, UB plays a role in that. And so I think we're the biggest part of that. Therefore, we are going to have a better interrelationship from our management schools or our doctoral schools down into the four-year institution.
Thanks. So your professional involvement with the UB began when you began serving on the board of directors, I think, of the UB Foundation.
Right.
Is that correct? In the 1970s. So you have a pretty, significant arc of watching the campuses, whether it's south, north, and now, of course, the UB medical campus that bears your family's name, sort of evolve. How do you view that evolution of our sort of campuses, and what do you see in the future?
Well, I remember bringing my wife out here after I was first introduced to, I came out to the North Campus, hadn't really seen it, but I said, Peg, I want you to see what $1 billion looks like. And that was the original building of this campus in the North Campus, and there's the real interesting story that goes along with this. But look at how this campus has grown, and this has taken a completely different shape than it did before. The South Campus has become secondary and is now being rebuilt again. So physically, this has changed significantly. If you think of the medical school and the medical corridor, it's really built around and for our medical school down there. We're going to be terribly influential there so this is something that really didn't exist back in the 70s, and I didn't think we even perceived it back then. The academic programs have actually changed more so, Scott. When you think about it, I don't think half of the courses offered today existed then. Now that's evolutionary, not necessarily revolutionary, in the sense that this has happened over time, but so much of technology has taken over and taken ever-growing level of interest. Now, technology is a world different from me, and it's not within my brain part, but I think it's in every one of the next generation's thinking, that everything they do, think of technology in medicine, think of it in engineering or all the other schools, the roles it played. We were just talking about the law school and lawyers. How many have libraries today? I mean, whoever thought that libraries would become extinct? And I can see it happening. And just item after item has taken on technology, and it's moving at a faster and faster rate. So it's going to play a bigger role. And think of that as affected your courses that you offer today.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that I think we really take a lot of pride in, we certainly are well recognized. We're a global university. We attract students from all over the world who make great contributions to our scholarship. You know, why do you think U.S. institutions, including UB, are so attractive to the international community, and how do you see that playing out in your own sort of Delaware North?
Well, my experience has shown that the educators of the world are the United States, and I think that's because we've embraced these large, socially interactive universities that don't exist elsewhere in the world, and I think we embrace it not just as educating in one sense. We educate socially. We educate, you know, total experiences. The interaction of cultures exists here, and so if somebody, say, from other cultures say to you, you know, where I'm going to school, I don't think they always point as the U.S. as being the best. And hopefully we'll continue to do that.
Actually, my job doesn't exist at many other universities, so I'm glad we approach it that way.
There's a reason for that, Scott.
You can never get a quip over, I'm just telling you. You know, changing tone for just a minute, certainly a lot of UB's success has been attributable to its many volunteers and donors, and our good friend Mark Zernecki passed recently.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you might be able to share with us today, you know, what Mark meant to you, but also to the university in general, and what an important role he played as a partner on the council and beyond that.
In my tenure as chairman of the council, he's the first member that we lost in office, and it was a different experience. Mark, in my mind, epitomized what this university was about and what a Western New York personality was. He was a young man. He was educated here and went on to have an extraordinarily successful business career, a leadership position with the M&T and all. And his future was very bright. And he unfortunately passed away on us. But I think in my mind, he was a leader that I could depend on. He was somebody of great fabric. He signified the fabric of the people of Western New York and what we meant, and what, you know, his word was his bond, and you could trust him very much. I depended on him for his point of view. I depended on him representing the thinking of the Western New Yorkers. And to put it in perspective, we always figured that Western New Yorkers had Midwest values as far east as they could go. I think you go further, they have a different set of opinion and all. But he was a warm-hearted guy that will be sorely missed. It'll be very hard to replace him.
Yeah. No one's going to disagree. It was terrific. I had a chance to meet him on both the presidential search as well as the council, and it was just a terrific man.
Yeah. That presidential search was one of his failures.
You know, I'm sorry, Satish, I gave him the opportunity. You know,
He opened the door.
I try not to do it again, I promise. So, you know, we mentioned a little bit of the budget activity that just occurred, and you know, one of the things with the Excelsior, but one of the other things that was sort of talked about at the time was the University Center Foundations. And You know, there was some talk that I thought, I think many of us felt could have a real chilling effect on philanthropy and giving to the universities.
You put it very well, yeah.
And I'm just curious, you know, as a longtime volunteer with the UB Foundation, obviously a leader in the community, you know, such an important supporter of the University of Buffalo, you know, how does members in our audience and whatnot, what can we do to help preserve the great benefits of the foundation?
I think the best you can do is to understand the meaning of this. I think the suggestion that came out of the governor's office would be repulsive in all the intent of what the foundation stood for. It's the mandate of the foundation to manage gifts to this university that were made for specific reasons, and to, in any way, shape, or form, attack them or go after that. It's basically going to the very foundation of what our purpose was. We were supposed to guard and look after them and to make sure that their purposes don't get perverted. And this would be, I mean, in any other landscape, it would be considered illegal or improper. And so I suspect that it had a chilling effect on future donors to think that in any way, shape, or form the state would attempt to take any of that money and use it for its operating purposes. It just doesn't make any sense. And our gift, the Jacobs family gift, was given for purposes to the university, the medical school, and other. It would be something that I wouldn't be inclined to use the foundation for. But fortunately, he saw the lack of wisdom in the suggestion and moved away from it. But if it happens again, I remember, if there's something you don't like about the foundation, and all, don't attack the foundation, attack the people that are administering it. They're the ones that are making the mistake, and find other people that run it correctly. But the foundation is very important to us, and is going on for generations and should go on in the future.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jacobs, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing some of your thoughts. I really appreciate it. I know the audience really is very appreciative of your time and your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I'm off of you.
Another one of our Volunteer Leadership Summit hosts, and a volunteer leader himself, is UB Foundation Chair Francis Littrow. Mr. Littrow received his degree from the UB School of Law in 1979 and is sole practitioner at his law practice, Francis M. Littrow Attorneys and Counselors at Law. He is active in the law community and in the UB community, currently serving as the Vice Chair of the Dean's Advisory Council for the School of Law and Chair of the UB Foundation Board. Please help me join in welcoming Fran to the stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm really glad to be here today to have this opportunity to share discussion and conversation with so many alumni and good friends of this wonderful university. It's really great to see the turnout that we have today. As a proud graduate of the University of Buffalo Law School, I am happy to introduce our keynote speaker today, Teresa Miller. Teresa is the Vice Provost for Equity and Inclusion here at UB and is a professor of law specializing in criminal law, immigration law, and prisoner law. She currently sits on the board of directors of the Correctional Association of New York and is an advisor to the Lifers Group of Attica Correctional Facility. I think it goes without saying that the keynote topic here today, diversity and global thinking, is at the top of all of our minds in today's world. Please join me in welcoming our Vice Provost for Equity and Inclusion, Teresa Miller.
Good afternoon. I'm really delighted to speak with you today at the Volunteer Leadership Summit. The list of speakers and panels is truly impressive, and it's an honor to share my excitement about the work I do here at UB with you. I'd like to thank the steering committee that extended the invitation, but most importantly, I'd like to thank all of you for the time and talent you dedicate to UB throughout the year. Through your volunteer leadership, UB is positively impacting the world through education, research, and engagement. So thank you for your service. I'm going to describe 3 things for you. How UB has come to embrace its current definition of diversity, the real challenges, the very real challenges UB faces in maintaining diversity within its faculty, students, and staff, and the points of progress that demonstrate that UB is truly on the right trajectory. In sum, I'm describing for you what makes me excited to come into work every day. How we think about diversity, how we define it, has changed dramatically in the last several decades. So in the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s, the focus was really on increasing compositional diversity of federally protected racial groups, right? Remediating past discriminatory practices through race-sensitive admissions and equal opportunity programs. It was inspired by social justice. It was the era of the first black fill-in-the-blank, and it sort of tracked assimilation into the American melting pot as its model. The outcome, as you can see in the bottom picture, right, was often 1 or 2 black students in a class, a few women here and there. But as we moved into the 70s and the 1980s, there was much more of a focus on nurturing, promoting, and understanding the culture and experiences of underrepresented minorities and women, including fostering intergroup understanding through separate gender and ethnic studies programs. So this was a little bit more consistent with a business model. We have these students here now. They need to see people in the classroom who can relate to their experiences, who look like them, who invest in them. And consistent with that model, we sort of broadened out to a more of a salad bowl model, away from assimilation, more we're sort of all here and we have our different identities and we're exploring them and how we get along. The outcome was often more black and Hispanic students in the classroom, many more women, but many of whom lived in and studied in enclaves, right, concentrated in ethnic studies departments. Today, in the 1990s and the 2000s, we have a definition and a concept of diversity that's much more tied to inclusion, right? The focus is on inclusion of many different student diversities, including multiracial students, international students, LGBTQ students, first-generation students, students of varying abilities, right? And we emphasize integrating diversity into the curriculum and also across the disciplines. So it's a much more across the university, deep into the curriculum, functional model of diversity. And functional diversity is the idea that diverse teams solve hard problems faster and better. And Scott Page, who's a political statistician at the University of Michigan, has reduced this down to a mathematical formula, right? So the research very much supports that. And it sort of looks like this. It's the recognition that all persons are to some extent culturally bound. We see the emergence of whiteness as an area of ethnic studies. And the outcome is we've achieved a great deal of gender parity in the student body. We're getting there in our faculty, our gender parity with faculty. We have millennial students who are comfortable living many different multiple identities. And part of our goal of inclusion is really to help them to reach their full potential by supporting them in their many differences. So what is inclusion? Well, it's that state of being valued, respected, affirmed, and supported. It's about focusing on the needs of every individual and ensuring that the right conditions are in place for each person to achieve and to achieve to their full potential. We believe that inclusion should be reflected in an organization's culture, practices, relationships, and it is an indispensable condition of sustaining diversity. In other words, another way of putting this is you can bring people in, you can do compositional diversity, but without an inclusive environment, people will leave, right? So they're kind of inextricably bound. We express that at UB through a concept called inclusive excellence, right? The recognition that UB cannot achieve its full potential to solve the world's greatest problems if it is not itself diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Our goal is no longer just compositional, check the box diversity, but this more dynamic form of diversity. In sum, I've described to you our inclusion-focused approach to diversity. It's inspired by functional diversity, it's responsive to internationalization, and it's mission-driven. So let's talk about some of the challenges that UB faces in maintaining this diversity. Well, most universities struggle to maintain diversity in their student body and faculty. You were invited to pre-submit some questions, and I received a question about faculty diversity, particularly underrepresented minority ladder faculty, right? Faculty are full-time, tenured track, or tenured. And so this recent article in our student newspaper really focuses on, what is the experience of black faculty? Are they, dwindling and isolated? What is happening? And they, the students produced some, well, actually, I give them data. And they provided some numbers. And I know these things are a little too tiny to see, but I just want to talk a little bit about the first yellow column, which is what UB looked like in 2005 in terms of faculty diversity, and what it looked like 10 years later, right? Because we have grown more diverse. In this 10-year period, we grew quite a bit more diverse, and we certainly the numbers of our white faculty shrank 13%, right? Our domestic diversity trended downward, right? So these numbers, African American, Native American faculty, 0.2% fewer Native American faculty, 0.3% fewer Asian American faculty, 2% fewer African American faculty, 0.7% fewer Hispanic faculty. But we added diversity in our international faculty by a whopping 17%, right? So again, as we're realizing that diversity comes in many different forms, we realize that there are different experiences from being born in a different place, bringing your worldview, your life experiences to bear upon the curriculum at UB. And that's a different type of diversity that enriches UB as well. Today, the marketplace for researchers is global, and UB attracts scholars from all over the world, far more than when I began teaching here at UB in 1995. And I want to note in those categories that we very purposely disaggregate domestic diversity from international diversity. And this is a good example of inclusion, right? We are being attentive to all different types of differences. Many schools, I will not name them, count as underrepresented faculty or faculty of color their international faculty. And we think it's really important to be mindful and intentional about the differences between those differences. In our new general education program, for example, the UB curriculum, we created a diversity learning requirement that focuses on the social construction of difference within the history of the United States, as well as global pathways to international experiences and studies. We know the two aren't equivalent, but again, we recognize that many different diversities are represented here at UB, and we try to do them justice in our curriculum and our policies and programs. And one example of the way in which it's really important to recognize this difference is, you might have heard we had some signs that went up on some of our campus buildings last year, white only, black only signs, and international students kind of were looking around pondering what is going on, while our students of color, like our particular African American students, were, it touched a nerve for them, right? So again, understanding that people come with different experiences and understandings of difference. And our goal here at UB is to make sure our students can go out and be successful in an increasingly diverse and global workplace. And that means really getting the experience of raising their cultural competency, working with people from very different backgrounds, being in teams with both underrepresented minority students, international students, transgender students, LGBT students, students with disabilities. It's the whole range. So back to the data, right? Why is it so hard to maintain a diverse faculty in which underrepresented minorities are represented in the same proportions as in the population? Well, it takes about 30 years to create a faculty candidate, right? A candidate with a PhD in hand. And when you think about the things that have happened in the past 30 years, our nation has really been impacted by declining state investment in public higher education, right? Making it less affordable for groups who cluster in lower income brackets, which are often African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans as well. In 1978, some of you may remember, Bakke ended the use of minority set-asides to remedy past discrimination. So the tools that we can legally use to create pipelines are shaped by the law, right? And so even as that law changes, we have to be very intentional and mindful of those constraints. We also, you know, we're more attentive to these days to the 1%, right? And the sense that there's decreasing social and economic mobility, right? Which has a disparate impact on underrepresented minorities. So these impacts have narrowed the pipeline a bit, right? When we hover at about 6%, we also have to think about critical mass, you know, and think about remedies and programs and initiatives that bring groups of people in so that they feel like they are welcome, like there are people that look like them around, that we have faculty that feel comfortable being in, you know, in their community. So critical mass is a factor. And last but not least, the big yellow circle, that's Yale University that just spent $50 million on an initiative to poach our best and brightest faculty of color. From, you know, they're doing that around the country. So these are very real challenges. But it's clear that we are up to the challenge and have been working very hard to address those challenges. Where are the points of progress then that demonstrate that UB is on the right trajectory? Well, on May 5th, the Chronicle of Higher Education posted a list of 60 AAU, elite AAU, research-intensive peer institutions and their faculty hiring for fall of 2015. UB was 33rd of 60, right? Sort of squarely in the middle of the pack. We are not by any means at the bottom of the list, and we are, you know, working every day to be at the top of that list. But what it says is these challenges are not unique to UB. They're challenges that all research universities face. We outstripped on this list Harvard, Princeton, Cornell, UC Berkeley, and Stony Brook, all right? and 8 universities on the list did no hiring of underrepresented minorities for the fall of 2015. 8 of the 60. Other initiatives that are moving, wow, I got ahead of myself, didn't I? Other initiatives that are moving us forward, we have incredibly talented faculty like Joe Gardella, who has had multi-million dollars in NSF grants that have exposed thousands of teachers and students in the Buffalo Public Schools to new ways of teaching and learning science. Joe's work represents both an investment in the city of Buffalo and possibilities for growing our own faculty locally. We were nationally recognized, UB was nationally recognized by the Educational Trust for substantial increases in our minority student graduation rate, from the class entering in 2005 to the class entering in 2010, the 6-year graduation rate for underrepresented minority students increased 23 percentage points to 64.2%, and the 4-year graduation rate increased 30 percentage points. Right? So we're clearly on an upward trajectory. We are working on the faculty search committee training. We are institutionalizing training that makes the process fair, right? So we're both working on the pipeline and working on the process. Increasingly, faculty search committees are being trained on reducing barriers to diversity in the search process. We talk about implicit bias as well as best practices. The university has created an Office of Inclusive Excellence, right? This is my new office, right? Charged with shaping the goals, actions, and advancement of inclusive excellence and monitoring UB's progress toward diversity and inclusion. Finally, we're doing a lot of work with our students around difficult conversations because in this very politically charged and fractious time, there are many problems, differences of opinions, conflicts that arise. Our DIFCON series is a discussion series that takes on controversial, even divisive issues. And we sit down as a community, faculty, students, and staff, and talk through them in a way that promotes civil discourse about controversial topics, and really works toward creating a culture of leaning into hard conversations, right? But doing it with a set of ground rules, respecting every voice, and valuing every contribution. The question is, have we created the intellectual climate in which we can have those difficult conversations? And increasingly, yes, the answer is yes. We're going to keep those conversations going. But we are helping our faculty, students, and staff to understand that learning begins at the end of your comfort zone. So I walk into my office every morning excited to tackle these challenges, brimming with ideas, thrilled to work with peers and leadership partners to shape a diverse, inclusive climate that intellectually nurtures young minds and moves UB forward. Thank you for your time, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions for you. Do you want to read them or do you want me to read them? Okay. So we have two questions for Terry. The first question, in an environment that traditionally has not been diverse, what's your best advice for making an organization an attractive employment or engagement option for a diverse pool of candidates?
Thank you. Right. I would say that it's really important to be honest about your challenges, right? To be honest, but also to be honest about your openness to bringing people in who are going to have different perspectives, different thoughts. I think that is it's an important message to send to candidates. It's important at the same time to work to increase the cultural competence of everyone in the organization. Cultural competence lays the groundwork for diversity. So one of the things I say to faculty search committees is, you may have an applicant pool that is representative of the diversity of your available labor pool, right? But by the time you get to the finalists coming through, you may have a very homogeneous group. Do you throw your hands up, right, and go, well, we'll just take the guy from Harvard? No, right? What you do is you think, who's culturally competent, who has both, who lends strength and a different perspective and complementary skill set, whose cultural competence will lay the groundwork so that the next person of color who comes into this organization gets a really good vibe. So I think that's very important. I think it's important to be honest about both your challenges and your excitement about diversity, but also to take responsibility for making sure that everyone in the organization is culturally competent.
have one additional question, and this one is a two-parter. How will the U.S. President's positions in regard to immigration and globalization affect the university's goals of promoting, recruiting, maintaining, and protecting an internationally diverse student body? And in what ways do you see this affecting student opportunities to study abroad?
Okay, just a tiny little one, right? All right. So I would say, and there are many experts in international education, and so I'm going to give you, sort of my perspective from my viewpoint. In general, I think that the President's position on immigration and globalization has had somewhat of a chilling effect on student exchange, on international travel. We are still processing, right? And we're still in our admissions processing cycle. But from what I hear from my colleagues in international education and enrollment management, early indications are that international enrollment for undergrads is not falling off a cliff. Graduate school enrollment is a little bit more of a challenge. There's a lot of uncertainty around the number of H-1B visas that will be available, uncertainty around the opportunity to do optional practical training, which is that, 1 year after you finish your training at UB, that you have a practical work experience. I think study abroad is, there's nervousness, right, about moving around the planet right now. And it looks as if our enrollment in some of the summer and fall study abroad programs may be a little bit more modest than we anticipated, but again, nothing devastating. I guess I'd like to say something about protecting our students. 2 years ago, as a community, we sort of came together with the campus police and revised their policies to prohibit immigration status checks. So during routine traffic stops, right? So our students have the knowledge and the confidence that they're not going to be stopped on our campus and asked for their immigration status. There are times when that is appropriate, but it's much further down the process, usually with a pending arrest. And in terms of sanctuary campuses, and SUNY sort of preempted that for us. That's a decision that is getting made at a different pay grade than mine. And it's getting at a different institutional level. But New York State, we're lucky to live in a state that actually affords the protections that are very different than the protections that are afforded to non-U.S. citizens in states like Texas, Alabama, and Arizona. So I think our students have the confidence of knowing, and the confidence to also reach out to our campus police rather than to fear them. So, thank you.
Thank you again, Terry. And thanks again to all of you for your own service to the university. So many things would not be possible without the added support and enthusiasm from our volunteers. I hope you all will continue to lead in this way and take away something from today's summit that will inspire you in your own professional, personal, and volunteer efforts. This concludes our luncheon program. We have about 30 minutes or so until the first interactive session begins at 2 p.m. A few housekeeping items before we break from lunch. The Drama Theater is located in the front of the atrium just before the stairs. Please note that if you previously had a session in the Black Box Theater, it has been moved to the Project Space Room 155 on this floor, which is accessible by the elevators by the registration table. The lower art gallery is just at the bottom of the stairs, which is also near the registration table. If you need a wireless accessibility connection, please sign on to UB Connect Wireless and enter your email address and password. Finally, if you need to recharge your own batteries or the batteries of your mobile device, please take a moment in our courtesy lounge located directly to my left. It is open all day with refreshments, phone chargers, couches, and a bit of quiet. I look forward to seeing you again at 6 p.m. this evening in this building for our Alumni Association Awards program. In the meantime, enjoy this afternoon's sessions, and again, thank you.